A talented violinist was on the verge of death due to a severe finger infection. Despite opposition from others, Shawn made the difficult decision to amputate, ultimately saving her life. At the same time, a mysterious virus broke out in the emergency room. Dr. Lim was infected and collapsed, forcing the hospital into full lockdown. In this moment of crisis, Shawn performed a C-section for the first time, successfully saving both mother and child. A true miracle. Later, the virus was confirmed to spread through droplets. With the help of ECMO, Lim pulled through and the ER was finally cleared for reopening. The woman was clearly still awake, yet the doctors went ahead and opened her skull to begin brain surgery. What's even more shocking, they played television for her during the surgery. Her name was Lana, and she had been diagnosed with a grade 2 arteriovenous malformation in her brain. Under normal circumstances, the surgery wasn't too complicated, but the real challenge was that Lana was autistic. Because Shawn was also autistic, the other doctors couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Sure enough, when they tried explaining the surgery to Lana, she seemed completely lost in space, showing no response. Instead, she asked everyone to name the 78th digit of pi. The doctors were stunned. Just as Lim was about to joke that she'd eat her scalpel if anyone knew the answer, Shawn instantly recited the correct digit. And at that moment, Lana's boyfriend Javier suddenly becomes visibly agitated. Shawn quickly turned off the lights and Javier calmed down. It turned out Javier was also autistic. As he turned to leave, Morgan stopped him. He explained he had to go home immediately because his favorite movie commentary channel had just uploaded a new video. After Javier left, Lana proceeded with her pre-op scans. The results showed a small cerebral hemorrhage, meaning the surgery risk had significantly increased. The doctors told Lana about the danger, but she stayed silent. Even Shawn couldn't get through to her. It wasn't until Javier brought dinner to the hospital room that she finally opened her mouth to speak.
Surgery sounds scary, but necessary, so I'll do it.
It was clear that these two kindred souls were each other's greatest source of support. That night, when Lana felt anxious about the surgery, she asked if her boyfriend could stay with her while she slept. Of course, her request was denied by the doctors. Any emotional excitement could spike Lana's blood pressure and put her life at serious risk. The surgery began on schedule, but trouble followed quickly. Once the skull was opened, the doctors found the affected vein was hidden too deep to locate visually. Shawn had another idea. Stimulate the vein by getting Lana to speak, making it easier to identify. But just as they had anticipated, Lana had extreme difficulty communicating. Asking her to speak on cue was nearly impossible. Their only hope was Javier, but he refused. Because the operating room lights were so bright, he said even a glance could overwhelm him. So Shawn had to try instead. But no matter what he said, he couldn't replace Javier. After a few words, Lana fell silent. Everyone tried to encourage her, but she wouldn't say another word. At this rate, the surgery would fail, and Lana's life would be in danger. But just when all hope seemed lost, Javier mustered the courage to walk into the OR. Even though the light still hurt his eyes, the power of love pushed him forward. Lana responded naturally to him, and the surgery could finally proceed. The hidden threat in her brain was successfully removed. While secretly playing with her father's handgun, Molly accidentally fired several shots into her own face, destroying most of her facial bones and soft tissue. After 12 intense surgeries, doctors managed to reconstruct her face, but only just barely. Her only remaining option was a full facial transplant, if someone was willing to donate. At that very moment, 14-year-old Karen was rushed into the ER following a car crash. She hadn't worn a seatbelt, and her organs were severely damaged. Soon after the operation began, her brain stopped receiving blood, and she no longer had a pupil reflex. Karen was declared brain dead. When her mother Shannon heard the news, she broke down completely. Her only child, her entire world, was gone in an instant. Just as Shannon was still lost in her grief, Marcus sat down beside her and got straight to the point. He was hoping that Karen could donate her face. To a mother, her daughter's face holds indescribable meaning. How could she bear the thought of a stranger starting a new life wearing it? But fate had other plans. As Shannon was about to leave the hospital, she happened to meet Molly in the elevator. To her surprise, Molly was cheerful and optimistic. Even though she lived each day under others' stares and judgment, she still faced life with courage and light. Perhaps thinking of her daughter, Shannon ultimately agreed to go through with the face transplant. Looking at this priceless gift, Molly was filled with deep gratitude. Marcus immediately gathered all the hospital staff to prepare for the operation. This surgery would be incredibly complex. With an expected duration of 80 hours, they knew they had to give it their all, not just for Molly, but to honor the sacrifice of a selfless mother. As the operation approached, Shannon visited the hospital room one last time, tears in her eyes. When Karen's bed was pushed out of the elevator, All the medical staff stood silently on both sides of the corridor, paying their respects. In this final farewell, Shannon finally found her resolve. She gently kissed Karen's forehead, saying goodbye. The face transplant began. The doctors first marked Karen's face with surgical lines. At the same time, Molly was prepped and ready. Both teams began cutting in unison. Every incision had to be flawless. A single mistake, especially severing the wrong nerve, could ruin everything. Thankfully, the team had rehearsed extensively and the extraction went smoothly. Karen's face was carefully delivered to Molly's side. Then came the most time-consuming part of the operation, stitching the face into place. Each blood vessel and nerve had to be connected with absolute precision. Over the course of 2 days and 2 nights, the most skilled surgeons took turns operating. As Karen's face was attached to Molly, her skin slowly began to regain color. They had succeeded. The doctors fulfilled the hopes of both Shannon and Molly. When Molly finally woke up and looked at her reflection in the mirror, she saw a new beginning, and tears welled up in her eyes. That's when Shannon entered the room. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't express regret. She simply gave Molly a photo of Karen as a little girl and kissed her gently on the forehead, then left. May peace follow this brave mother for the rest of her life, and may she one day step out of the shadows and begin her own new journey. Diane's baby was given a death sentence the moment he was born. The baby was born with its intestines exposed, and its heart's membrane was so torn it looked like shredded cloth. Just as the doctors were at a loss, a man entered the operating room. It was Jackson, the newly hired chief of surgery. Taking charge immediately, he brought order to the chaos. But Jackson had one strange habit. He could only operate while music was playing. Unfortunately, Shawn, who has autism, found it impossible to focus in that noisy environment. He couldn't even hold his scalpel steady and ended up dropping it. Jackson managed to stabilize the baby's heart with a unique technique. But the core issues remained. The baby's condition was still life-threatening, and they needed a better solution. After surgery, the baby's parents approached Shawn, hoping to understand what caused the defects. Shawn answered honestly. It might have been due to the mother taking antidepressants before pregnancy, and Diane and her husband ended up arguing because of it. After hearing the news, Jackson confronted Shawn, scolding him for his lack of emotional intelligence, saying he wasn't fit to be a surgeon, and planned to transfer him to the pathology department to do lab work. But being a surgeon was Shawn's dream. He wasn't about to give up. If he wanted Jackson's approval, he had to prove himself in the next treatment. The baby's situation was far worse than expected. Its heart was so fragile that stitching it could be fatal. Even if they managed to repair it, the child might not survive for more than a few months. As the team struggled to find a solution, Shawn suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Instead of stitching the membrane, they could use a specially made plug to block the hole, eliminating the need for delicate sutures. It was a genius idea. Even Jackson had to admit Shawn's brilliance. The surgery began. Following Shawn's plan, they repaired the heart's defects and reinserted the intestines into the baby's abdomen. Shawn then connected the circulatory system to verify its success. The baby's vital signs began to stabilize. It looked like they had made it. But then, the baby's oxygen levels dropped rapidly. The cause? The baby's heart was beating too fast, leading to fluid buildup in the lungs. If this continued, the baby would die within 30 minutes. The doctors had no choice but to inform the parents and prepare to turn off life support. As they stood for a minute of silence, Shawn noticed something strange on the monitor. That's right, the baby could still be saved. He explained the theory to the team, and they immediately understood. After confirming it was feasible, the team jumped into action and managed to save the baby's life. Everything seemed perfect. Shawn thought this time Jackson would finally acknowledge his talent. But Jackson found him again and told him he still wasn't changing his decision. Shawn had given it his all, but sometimes effort alone isn't enough. Jackson's prejudice was a mountain, pressing down on Shawn's path forward. A woman collapses at home, but when doctors check her heartbeat, what they hear leaves them stunned. Even the ECG monitor couldn't read it properly, just lines of question marks. Then came something even weirder, the sound of a fan spinning inside her chest. The top priority was to fix whatever was wrong with her heart. But strangely, no hospital had any record of a transplant. What was going on? Luckily, the patient's daughter soon arrived at the hospital. She explained the mystery. The heart had come from overseas, which was why no local hospital had it in their system. The doctors immediately called a hospital in Beijing for a consultation. Hello? We have an emergency. The patient's cardiac output is dangerously low. We can't maintain her blood pressure. Please notify doctor. Right away. China had the most advanced artificial heart technology, so the best option was to transfer the patient to Beijing. The medical team agreed and began preparing the family. Just then, another woman entered and claimed to be the patient's daughter. Doctors told her to accompany her sister and escort their mother to China, but she looked confused. Sister? What sister? Everyone was stunned. Was this turning into some kind of ghost story? It turned out this woman was the patient's biological daughter, but due to past conflicts, they had severed ties many years ago. Since then, the mother had grown close to her caregiver, who gradually became like a daughter to her, so much so that everyone assumed she was her daughter. The caregiver had always treated her with respect and care. In contrast, the real daughter hadn't called her mother once in 15 years. So when the mother saw her biological daughter again, the argument was instant. Their shouting caused the patient's blood pressure to spike. She passed out on the spot. Because of this, she could no longer travel. Her condition had to be treated in the current hospital. Doctors held a live consultation with the Beijing team, who diagnosed the issue as a broken impeller blade in the artificial heart centrifugal pump. But the hospital didn't have a replacement part. The only option was to 3D print a plastic substitute to use temporarily, until the original part could be shipped. The surgery began. Doctors opened the woman's chest and located the spinning blade. Once the new part was installed, everyone stared nervously at the monitors. The next moment, her blood pressure stabilized. Relief swept through the entire team. After the surgery, her daughter waited anxiously outside the room, unsure if her presence would cause her mother more distress. The caregiver gently encouraged the mother to talk to her daughter. Blood is thicker than water. Wasn't it precisely because she cared so deeply for her daughter that she became so emotional? The daughter finally entered the room, crying, as she apologized for ignoring her parents' feelings for so long. Hearing her daughter's words, the mother began to recall their happy memories, and eventually forgave her. A very special patient arrived at the hospital. He had a tumor on his body that weighed nearly 200 pounds. The only silver lining was that, because the case was so rare, the hospital agreed to cover all of Kenny's medical expenses in full. The condition, however, was that the entire removal procedure would be live-streamed, giving the medical community a rare learning opportunity. A win-win deal like that? Kenny had no reason to say no. But how do you remove a tumor that size? First, they performed an MRI scan. The tumor's blood vessels were tangled like a ball of yarn. Even more shocking, some vessels were as thick as a thumb. That's because the tumor was still growing. Within just a single week, it had gained another 10 kilograms. If they followed the original removal plan, Kenny could bleed out in just 5 minutes, so the hospital decided to halt the surgery. But Kenny wasn't backing down. He decided to risk it all. Better to die on the operating table than be slowly tortured to death by illness. Faced with his determination, Claire proposed a bold new approach. She suggested tying off the thick blood vessels directly on the tumor and using clotting agents to stop the bleeding. Kenny didn't really understand the details, but this was his last hope, and he agreed. The operation began. At first, everything went smoothly, but then Kenny's central venous pressure began to rise, which meant they had half the original time to complete the surgery. The team had no choice but to speed up and begin peeling the tumor away. 3 hours passed and the doctors had only removed half the tumor, but Kenny had already lost 8.5 liters of blood. To cut the tumor from its root, the surgical team needed to hoist Kenny up. But the moment they did, Kenny went into shock. There was no choice but to halt the surgery. The doctors quickly injected stimulants to keep him alive for now. Just as Surgeon Jackson was about to declare the operation a failure, someone suggested giving Shawn a try. At that time, Shawn had been reassigned to pathology due to Jackson's bias, meaning he wasn't allowed to participate in any surgeries. Jackson, who harbored prejudice against people with autism, refused to let Shawn back in, but the rest of the team pleaded on Shawn's behalf. Eventually, Jackson relented and agreed to bring him in. Shawn took one look at the scan, and in his mind, a full 3D model of the tumor's vascular system appeared. Then he told the doctors to stop everything. At first, everyone was disappointed, but Shawn explained. They needed to clamp the aorta and release it every 10 minutes, pausing and resuming the surgery in cycles to prevent excessive bleeding. Only Shawn could have come up with something so brilliant. The room filled with admiration, except for Jackson, who was clearly uncomfortable. The surgery continued for another 10 hours. The tumor was finally removed and lifted away by a crane. Doctors who witnessed the surgery couldn't help but applaud this epic, history-making operation. Afterward, Shawn went to find Jackson. Given everything that had happened, he hoped Jackson would now allow him to return to the surgical team, but he hadn't realized. By saving the patient in front of a global audience, he had publicly embarrassed Jackson. Jackson snapped, "Get out of here. You? An autistic surgeon? What do you think this is? A TV show?" Shawn, pushed past his limit by the cruel words, finally snapped. And as expected, he was fired on the spot. He left the hospital, rain pouring down, just like the day he first arrived. Shawn was a good doctor, but the prejudice against him never truly went away. That night, Shawn sat in a bar, drowning in disappointment. Suddenly, a man threw a punch at him, then a kick. But the very next second, that man collapsed. His head slammed against the floor, blood pooling beneath him. Shawn took the man to the hospital, but he refused to go inside because he was no longer a doctor. Claire stayed by his side, trying to comfort him. Later, Zach's test results came back. All normal. He just needed to wake up and he'd be fine. But Shawn remembered something. Before Zach passed out, his speech was slurred and his legs stiffened. If it wasn't just alcohol, then something was wrong with his nervous system. He urged Claire to run full-body scans. After giving the instructions, Shawn walked away. He went to the restroom and lifted his shirt. Massive bruises covered his side. The punch Zach had thrown earlier had broken one of Shawn's ribs. He had been enduring the pain all along, because in his eyes, the patient's life always came first, even if that patient was the one who assaulted him. Shawn went to check on Zach, but Zach didn't want to talk. Still, Shawn only needed one glance to know what was wrong. If Zach continued on the current treatment plan, he wouldn't live much longer. But just as Shawn was about to reveal Zach's diagnosis, he suddenly collapsed. His fractured rib had pierced his internal organs, causing heavy bleeding. He slipped into unconsciousness. Zach relayed Shawn's diagnosis to Claire just in time. But even after a full exam, Zach's results still appeared normal. Did Shawn's intuition finally fail? Before Claire could sort it out, Zach suddenly lost consciousness. Right now, only Shawn knew what was wrong with Zach. But his own condition was extremely critical. Hope seemed lost. That's when Claire had an idea. Shawn could always spot the disease just by observing. So what if she tried to mimic him? She straightened her back, raised her heel like Shawn always did, and visualized herself processing the data like him. Within seconds, insights rushed into her brain. She understood. It turned out that Zach was infected with treponema pallidum. He needed emergency surgery right away. When Shawn eventually regained consciousness, the first thing he tried to do was tell them Zach's diagnosis. At that moment, Claire entered the room and told Shawn the news about saving Zach. Shawn finally relaxed, lying back on the hospital bed with a relieved smile. After this incident, the hospital became even more convinced that Shawn was a rare talent. His medical skills and deep empathy for patients made him truly suited to be a surgeon. But Jackson still refused to accept him. He gave the team an ultimatum: either Shawn leaves or I do. It seemed obvious. An experienced chief surgeon was more valuable than an autistic resident. Just when everyone thought Shawn was out of chances, someone unexpected spoke up. Marcus, who had always been critical of Shawn, suddenly spoke up.
Just as you have the power to fire someone under your supervision, so do I.
It turned out that after observing him over the past few days, Marcus had come to recognize Shawn's talent. Even if keeping him meant the hospital would suffer a major loss, he didn't want to let down the entire team. And just like that, Shawn was reinstated. His journey as a truly good doctor would continue.